other sports, sports days when lots of people have been on the train, I don't think it could have been anything really crazy, like somebody pulling a weapon and shooting or doing anything in the train that would have required the type of force that you saw applied to these gentlemen, especially with the killing of Grant. We all know the story about him pleading for his life. We all heard the stories about him trying to talk to the officers and calm everybody down. We also heard the stories that they had tasers pointed at the other men that were on the platform, and maybe even Grant himself. You have to talk to their lawyer, John Burris, to get all the details, but whatever the case, all we know is that there was an unarmed man whose hands were behind his back. He was on the face down on a platform with another officer having his knee on his neck, and this gentleman was shot in front of plain view of hundreds of people. And I don't think people can really appreciate how traumatic that is. I mean, we saw an execution, a modern-day lynching, take place before our very eyes, and we haven't seen the type of urgency and the type of immediate redress that I think people would like to see happen, considering what took place.
And the mayor of Oakland is Ron Dellums. So what has been the mayor's response to all of this?
Well, he's been responding now. I mean, yesterday they announced that he's going to help set up some healing centers, but as far as I'm concerned, he was very slow. If you have something like this happen, you're the mayor of the city. It's up to you to assure the people that that something's going to be done. I mean, Giuliani and Mayor Bloomberg, they pretty quickly addressed New York City after Sean Bell and Amadou Diallo. Whether or not I agreed with their position on it, it doesn't matter. At least they talk to people. In other cities, when you've seen these types of things happen, the leadership has stepped out and said something. Here it was 6 or 7 days, and only after people were protesting and lobbying and having conversations and meeting, and in my opinion, is when the city started to catch on fire and people were jumping on cop cars, that all of a sudden you had all this movement. I'm sure it was going to happen sooner or later, but I mean, 6 days after seeing an execution on your watch, and to me, is inexcusable. You should have been out there day one, the minute it happened. I mean, just for us, like, we were on vacation, our show. We had already pre-recorded our things, and we were gone. We came off vacation just to follow the story and be a part of that, because we knew the way that media would look at this. The first thing they would do is not look at a young man who was shot unarmed and execution style. We knew that they were going to try and flip it and find out what his past was, and maybe imply that maybe he deserved it. Did he have a criminal record? All these types of things. And some of those outlets did do that. So it was important that we came up there and reminded people that this was an unarmed man who got killed in the presence of 4 or 5 officers who were able to restrain him. And from what we could see from the videotapes, he wasn't fighting or resisting anybody.
Davey D. Oakland is certainly in contrast to its neighbors not far away, San Jose and San Francisco. 400,000 people about in Oakland, high unemployment, high poverty. What is being called for right now? Bay Area legislators like Assemblyman Tom Amiano and State Senator Leland Yee have introduced bills to establish a civilian review board for the transit systems police. Is that adequate, do you feel, and what is being called for?
Well, I mean, I don't think it's adequate unless that civilian review board really has teeth. We've had how many civilian review boards since the days of the Panthers? You know, there was always a push to have some sort of accountability. You have a committee, people study it, you set things up, and then somehow you still have killings that go on. Remember, we're talking about Oscar Grant this time, but you have, like, what, 6 or 7 that took place in Oakland last year alone. And I remember the Gary King killing that took place when everybody was marching in Gina, Louisiana for the Gina 6. You had a guy, Gary King, in North Oakland, who was shot in the back by an officer who had already shot 2 or 3 people over the past year or so, including somebody who I understand was handicapped and in a wheelchair. So you never have the sort of punishment and discipline that I think many of us feel should be meted out to officers who are abusive. And keep in mind, right now, it makes news when we talk about people being killed. what we don't talk about all the time is all the disrespect, the people that find themselves on the receiving end of some sort of abuse, having to witness a parent maybe being abused by the police, or a mother or father or cousin. When we've been out there and covering these stories, you hear this over and over and over and over and over again. People crying and will tell you a story about what they witnessed or what they've experienced. And I don't think people who are removed from that or who never experienced some sort of brutality from the police can't really appreciate that. They think it's like, okay, well, you know, he got arrested and that's it, and we should move on and let's turn it and find out what else is going on in the news. No, this is very traumatic. It's in my opinion, it's like a terrorist act.
Well, David D., I want to thank you very much for being with us. The history of Oakland is very interesting. Black Panthers founded there in 1966. Bobby Hutton, who was 17 years old, was killed there. We will continue to follow this story. David D., hip-hop journalist and activist, runs the popular website David D.'s Hip Hop Corner, and DavidD.com, co-host of Hard Knock Radio on sister station KPFA in Berkeley. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. We'll be back in a minute.
Feeling fine from the party after New Year's Eve. You know the train's getting rowdy, and having a couple drinks doesn't make me an alkie. People started fighting and somebody pointed out me. Here come the bar police charging me. I don't ought to beef, I'm a father, please. I got a little girl at home, she only 4 years old. She my world, my flesh and bone, his tears started to roll. If they just looked him in his eye, they could see clear to his soul. But these cops only understand fear and control. Face down on the ground in a prone position. Bystanders start recording, cell phones was flipping, thinking he's another brother on the road to prison. They have no idea they gon' witness a lynching. The young brother was clinching, but he wasn't resisting it. Johannes Mesery made a fatal decision as he rose to his feet and took hold of his seat. The entire train station froze in disbelief. Oscar, the father, barely over 20, with goals and the dreams of household and family. His last seconds on earth, he didn't know it could be. Only the dirty train station flow he could see. You hear the bullet explode through his fleece. You won't see an execution that cold in the streets. Damn, you see what happened? That cop started snapping. Cell phones they was grabbing. I had mine in the lining of my jacket. That cop was a cold-hearted. Shooting them in the back is an act of a savage. A flash from the gap that snatched your whole future. You can lose your life just by being a commuter. As soon as I get home, I upload.
That's by Jasiri X, OG3, Oscar Grant.